So I am super, super excited to do this video because this came up sort of out of the air when I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said that, okay, Hung, if I know somebody and they had $100,000, what's the best thing that they can do with that money? Like, how can they make that money grow? And I was like, oh my God, if I had $100,000, there's so much I would do with it. So the one thing right off the bat that I would recommend is that if you do have $100,000 is to let the rule of 72 take its course, okay? And the rule of 72 it's something that's super amazing, and seriously, it's like if you have $100,000 and you're still fairly young, like in your early 30s, late 20s, take advantage of the rule of 72. Because basically what it is by the time you're in your 50s, that $100,000 would be worth $1 million. You don't have to do anything else with that $100,000. You don't even have to work at all. Okay, and I do apologize. I'm at the public library right now, and so there's some background noise. But I wanted to share with you what this rule of 72 is, and how you can take $100,000 and make it into $1 million without doing any more work with that $100,000. You don't have to add any more money in. That money itself will grow into $1 million. Okay, do you want to figure this out? Okay, so imagine if you have $100,000, whether it's through inheritance or winning it, or if you've been lucky enough to be able to save this amount of money. Let's say you take this money and you put it into some investment stream, whether it's stocks, real estate. It really doesn't matter what investment stream it is. Okay, when you start off with that, if you're making 10% year over year over year over year, what you will see is by the time you get into your 7th year, so just a little bit over the 7th year mark, this number here, you'd be almost double your initial principal, your 100,000, okay? And then by year 8, you would be more than double that, okay? So now let's say you leave that money in there and you continue to get 10% year over year. By the time you go through 7.2 years, so now you're up to this 16-year mark here, okay? You are now at another doubling of your principal. So at the end of the 7 year, you left your 214 there, and now you've left that in there, and that's going to double. Okay. Now keep that in mind. So now you've got about $420,000 sitting in this account, collecting 10%. If you continue to leave that in the bank account or your investment vehicle, and you continue to get 10% year over year, by the time 24 years goes by, you would be almost at $1 million. Okay, so this rule of 72 basically states that if you put your money into an investment vehicle that makes 10% year over year, and you leave that money in there, you don't touch it, you don't withdraw any of it, by 7.2 years, you would have doubled your initial principal. Okay, so when you truncate this down, basically we would have gone through 3 cycles of that. Okay, so now let's just say, when you start this, you're at 30 years old. Okay, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Hong, not many people at age 30 has $100,000 sitting around. Okay, when I was 30, I definitely had nowhere close to this, just sitting around. But the idea is to show you that, okay, if you started at age 30 and you did nothing else in terms of, other investments or anything like that, all you had was this 100,000, by the time you are about 53, 54, you would have $1 million from doing nothing else, but just investing this 100,000 into some sort of vehicle at 10%. Okay, so now let's just say, by the time you're at age 20, you really only have 20,000. Okay, and I know for some people that's even a stretch too. But here's what I want to point out to you. It doesn't matter what the amount is. Just start. Just starting is the hardest point, right? Is the hardest thing. And a lot of times just showing up, just starting is 90% of winning already. Okay. So now let's say, 5 years later, you get another 20,000. So you dump that in. Okay. So you're 40,000 now. If you do nothing else, okay, by the time you're 24, 25 years down the road, you're going to be 53, 54 years old. You would have almost $320 or $350,000 just from your $40,000 that you've invested at age 30 and then at age 35. Okay. Now I know some of you are like, okay, Hong, I'm 35 now and I didn't know about this. So let's just say you don't do anything until you're 35 years old and you've got $20,000 sitting there. Okay. If you do nothing else, that $20,000 at age 35, by the time you're 53, 54, you're going to have 122 and 130, around $130,000, let's say. Okay. So this isn't that much, when you compare it to like the $1 million that you could get if you started at age 30 with $100,000. But this 130 is a significant growth from just $20,000. Okay. So now let's just say 5 years later, you add another 20,000. Okay. So from doing nothing else, your $40,000 will become $200,000. Okay. This is a great avenue to invest in something at 10%, to know that, okay, in 20 years you're going to have $200,000, which you didn't have before. All you had was $40,000. Okay. So now the other thing to point out about this is that the sooner you start investing, the more powerful this rule of 72 is, right? So the later you wait to invest, the less money you're going to get in return. Okay. So it's really, really important. Like these, with, kids that, teenagers, just get them to put $1,000 away a year. Like it doesn't matter what amount, just get them to start saving a couple of $100 here and there. And before you know it, by the time they're 30, they're going to have, $20,000, and that 20,000 makes a huge difference. Okay. So now the other thing you might be saying to me, okay, Hong, besides the fact that you don't have the money to just dump in like this, is, okay, well, where am I going to find investments that give me 10% year over year or year over year? Okay. So I get that, because I used to think like that too. I used to think, oh my God, unless I'm buying properties that are making rental income or doing whatever, I'm never going to get 10%. Like I don't do stocks, right? I just don't get that concept of stock. So I understand when you're saying, okay, well, Hong, if I don't buy real estate and if I don't do stocks, where am I going to get this 10%? And everybody says, if you give your money to these financial institutions, you never get 10% because they take their administration fees, they take their management fees. So really you end up with maybe 5, 6, 7%. Okay. So what I've come to realize in the last couple of years is that there are investments that give you 10%. Okay. So if you can do stocks, that's fantastic. Okay. The other thing that will give you 10% return year over year is with private lending or with syndicates or with group mortgages. Okay. And the way that works, okay, so now I'm just getting a little bit sort of outside the scope of what I wanted to touch on here. So I'm just going to touch on it and then we're going to move away from it. And if you want more information, please feel free to reach out to me on it. But there are avenues that you can, there's investment things that you can do that will give you 10% year over year. It's not guaranteed, but it's pretty up there in terms of, getting that 10%. Okay. So I hope that you like the information that you see here and that you understand the rule of 72 and get that concept and realize that the sooner you can start saving, whether it's $1,000, $2,000 a year, it doesn't matter. Just start. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. So I hope watching that quick video about the Rule 72 has made you excited about how money can just double. Okay. And it doesn't happen overnight. Like we said, it takes about 7 years for it to happen. But if you find the right investment vehicle that will give you 10% year over year and you leave the money there, okay, there's no magic to it. It just happens. Okay. So good luck with your investing.